Yep. With each passing day, as we get closer to the election, more and more polling data is coming out. And of course, the image of what's going to happen during this election season changes with each one of those reports. For more on all of that, a guy who's always very clear eyed and sober about it, Ryan Girdusky, joins us now. He's a founder of the 1776 Project Political Action Committee and the co author of the book, They're Not Listening: How the Elites Created the Nationalist Populist Revolution. Ryan, good to have you back with us, sir.
Thanks for having me.
The Sun Belt polling out from the New York Times today found that President Trump does look good in a couple of key states. What do you make of the current picture of the election?
Well, I mean, I think that there's two separate things. So there's two kinds of polls out right now. There's the polls that have national polls that have Kamala with a huge advantage, 4+ points, and then there's the polls that have it very close. She's either has 2 points, or it's tied, or he's up a little bit. And the main difference between those kinds of polls, because she's polling between 49 and 50% in every single major poll, right? And he's between 46 and 48%. The big question is, what do the third parties candidates get in? And how much is Trump going to overperform his number with men? Men, blacks, Hispanics. Those are the three. Right now, Harris is polling about exactly where Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden were with women. It's been almost no uptick in the female vote, which you would think would be there'd be a huge surge, but there's really not. College-educated whites, there's a little pickup. Non-college educated whites, tiny pickup, but not enough to be noticeable. The real question is going to be, how much more does Trump poll? Trump got 52% of the male vote in 2016 and 52% of the male vote in 2020. So nationally, can he get to 53, 54%? If he can, excuse me, 54, if he can, that will offset any kind of gains that she may be able to make with college-educated white voters, maybe some gains she may make with young voters if she gains any. But that's the real question. When it comes to the state polling, you've been seeing a lot of polls that sit there and say Trump's in a decent place in the Sun Belt. He slightly leads in Georgia and Arizona, North Carolina. He's got less than a point overall lead. Florida and Texas are pretty safe, but it's the Rust Belt. It's Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. I've written about this one point ad nauseum. The New York Times Siena poll had Harris +4 in Pennsylvania, even at the same time that it had Trump and Harris tied nationally. The reason I believe that there is an error in Rust State polling is because seniors vote Republican, right? It's been true for 2 decades at least. That's as far as we have exit data for. For 2 decades at least, seniors are voting Republican. Seniors in Pennsylvania vote more Republican than seniors nationally, which makes sense. There's more veterans on average. They're whiter. They just have a lot of characteristics that would say they're a Trump Republican. They had Harris winning Trump among seniors in Pennsylvania by 3 points, even though they had Trump winning seniors by 6 points nationally. I don't believe the senior number is correct. Nate Cohen, who heads the New York Times Siena poll research stuff, he sat there and said, he was like looking at their working white class numbers and saying, this looks good. And it did. It looked completely fine. Where the error was, in my judgment, was not in that number. It was in the seniors number. And right now what we're seeing as far as early ballots, although it's very early, Democratic early ballot requests are down significantly. Republican ballot requests are only down slightly. Virginia, being the first state for early voting, Republican counties were up over 100% from 4 years ago in the first day of early voting. So there's definitely high enthusiasm. If the Republicans can get lower propensity voters out earlier to go vote in the early election, where they have a month at this point in some places to get out and go vote early, they can still count on their election day victory on election day.
The early vote, a lot of discussion, including some. We had a caller on the last hour who said she's got a cousin who's hesitant to be an early voter, Trump supporter, out of concern about a ballot fraud and ballot meddling of some kind. But it strikes me that the best course of action is getting that early vote in for a bunch of reasons, including to give the campaign some space to go after, to chase other ballots, not yours anymore, and to take your name out of the system and to make sure that your vote is yours, right?
Yeah, listen, if you don't like to get 150 phone calls a day from campaigns saying, are you going to go vote early. But especially if you're a voter who you know what your life is like. If you've got kids, if something may happen on election day, you get a flat tire, it rains, it snows, who knows, and you know that you're not somebody who's a gung-ho, I will show up and go vote kind of person, then go vote early. Those are the people that really Republicans need to go and get, are people who either didn't vote in the last two presidential elections, maybe voted once, never vote in a midterm kind of people. Those are the people who they really need to sit there and get new voters, young men, people who are just low propensity voters. That's who they need to sit there and make their operation surrounded by. Because there are people who will just vote. I've never missed an election in my life. They can guarantee that I will go vote no matter when I will vote. But it is important for people who are not guaranteed voters, who are lazy voters, and they know who they are, that they get out and vote early.
Yeah, or that you pester your lazy family member to finally pull the trigger. You got a couple extra days to do that. Yeah, for sure. Hey, so you mentioned ages and how seniors, you expect some big support there for Trump. When it comes to the age categories, is it the seniors who are the most likely to actually cast a ballot?
Seniors are the most likely to cast a ballot. They have the highest voting propensity. This has been true for decades. They tend to be one of the more Republican groups in the demographics. 50 and over usually always vote Republican.
Yeah.
But the thing about the error in 2016 polling, the error in 2020 polling was surrounded around the seniors responding. It's called polling response bias.
Yeah.
People who want to answer polls. Older liberals who think Rachel Maddow is the voice of God, believe it or not, they tend to love to tell people how much they hate Donald Trump. So they will answer a poll. They'll call the pollster themselves. They won't wait till the phone rings to sit there and say, did I tell you I hate Trump and I'm not voting for him? And that is why you're seeing in 2020, people forget, in 2020, they had Biden winning seniors. The NBC poll that was just released that showed Kamala with a 4-point lead. In 2020, they had Biden winning seniors by, guess what, 23 points. He lost them by 4. It was and this year they just didn't publish the senior results at all, so I can't tell you if it was off or not off.
Yeah.
But 4 years ago, it was tremendously off, and it's off among everything. In the last poll, I think it was Quinnipiac, the last Quinnipiac, a week before Joe Biden dropped out, where everyone in America knew he had severe cognitive decline, he had completely blown the entire thing, the whole Democratic Party was wanting to leave. Quinnipiac's poll had Biden winning seniors by 8. Now, it's not true. It's not real. It's not really what's happening. It's just old liberal seniors. They love to answer polls, and they're throwing a lot of these numbers by big, overwhelming margins because they're answering it to such a high propensity. This is my opinion.
Okay, so let me ask you about some other age categories. So I'm just using the crosstabs from the New York Times Sunbelt survey today, and I'm looking at the ages here. And it's pretty clear that if you're 45 or over, in the Sun Belt at least, and my guess is this extends to much of the country, you're supporting Trump. That's the majority are supporting Trump in that age category. It's that 30 to 44 set where you get a lot of Kamala support, a lot. 30 to 44 is the age group, because at 18 to 29, you do have majority Kamala support, but you'd be shocked by how many of the very youngest voters are huge Trump supporters now. What do you make of kind of the generations and the way they're thinking about politics?
Of the geriatric millennial in my group of voters. Yeah, I mean, I think that if you grew up in the early 2000s and George W. Bush was your president, you probably still really hate Republicans. Your memories of the Republican parties were war, the 2008 economy crashing, fights over culture wars like gay marriage that you didn't agree with. And it kind of left a permanent bad taste in your mouth. I don't know if that will ever change. Older millennials, those over 40, tend to sit there and vote more Republican now and have seen some movement, some progress for it. I don't know if it's universal. I don't know if it will stick across the board, but it's definitely an issue going forward. And remember, as you go on in the generations become less and less white. whites are the only groups that vote majority Republican. So you will see a dip in support among generations simply on demographics alone. Now, young black men especially support Republicans more than old black men do. Middle-aged Hispanics support Republicans at a pretty decently high rate. But that is the obstacle right there, and that is partially reflected in these numbers. As this may be a TikTok election for people under 30 who are getting their news and their information from there, maybe it's changing. Maybe they're dancing to the "Ate the Cat, They Ate the Dog" song, and they're wanting to vote for Trump because they think it's cool. I'm not exactly sure because I've surpassed that age range.
Yeah, that's true. That's why I ask about it. I'm also curious. One area of the polling that I think shows a lot of promise for President Trump is that people still rate the economy as their number one concern. They trust him much more than they trust Kamala Harris on handling that. And right track, wrong track polling demonstrates that overwhelming majorities of the country, overwhelming 2/3 of the country, think that we're on the wrong track. I've heard a lot from the Kamala campaign lately that they want to, quote, turn the page as if Trump is president now. But it seems to me that as long as President Trump can beat that drum, which is we've got to get rid of these people because they're causing so many problems for you, the better.
Yeah, I mean, she's really hoping that she could be the change candidate just based on her looks, the fact that she's not white and she's not a man, so she's not Joe Biden. But I this is why she's avoided the press. What is she going to do differently? What is this break that she's going to have with Bidenomics, which she said worked, that she's going to bring in an economy that works for most people, especially for working class people? I have yet to see anything from her campaign, aside from her wanting to extend child tax credits, which the Trump campaign wanted to do as well, and destroy local housing zoning so we could have illegal aliens flood everywhere so houses could be cheaper for them. That's literally the only thing she's ever really said about the economy. She's not discussed in detail how the economy will look completely different under a Kamala Harris presidency versus that of Joe Biden. But this is the strategy of the campaign. It's all about vibes and making sure people can sit there and just judge her on the aesthetics alone and not have to delve into policy, because this is why she never speaks to the media. She's hiding. She's in the basement, like worse than Biden was in 2020.
Yeah, and this week she's promising yet another economic address with no details being provided anywhere about what she's actually going to propose. Lastly, Ryan Girdusky, I want to ask you about Pennsylvania. How important do you think that state is to whoever becomes the winner of this presidential election? We're watching as there's a lot of activity this week. Zelensky is implicitly campaigning for Kamala Harris right now in Pennsylvania at taxpayer expense. President Trump is speaking in Smithton, Pennsylvania, as you and I speak. And meanwhile, Kamala Harris is going to be in Pittsburgh on Wednesday. How essential is this state?
It's the whole ball game. I mean, there's very little chance anyone who is going to win Pennsylvania is going to be president without winning Pennsylvania. It's the entire election. So, if you know anyone in Pennsylvania who has not voted yet, or who was a very lazy voter, get them out to vote for Trump, because it is the entire election. I think it's Nate Silver who said it's a 92% chance whoever wins Pennsylvania becomes the next president. So there's a reason it's Pennsylvania. It's the new Florida. It is the essential swing state. And there's no way to win it without winning Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and clearly Zelensky's detecting that as well. That's why he's there right now. Hey, thank you very much, Ryan Girdusky. Always good to talk to you, sir. And keep it up on CNN, by the way. You're doing great there.
Thanks.
Love